Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. We will open the space first with karakia. Can you do us the honors, please?
Mauri ore hoa. Ngā mihi koutou. Whakawātea noi e mātou, whakawātea te hau o tō tuarungi e mātou, whakawātea te taurikarekitangi e mātou, kia maranga mai ai mātou ki runga, ti hei Māori ora. Ko ai au, ko kakapuku te maunga, ko mangaputa aua, ko maniapoto te iwi, ko te rohe pōtai o noho ana, ko Hinemoa McSweeney a hau. Welcome, nau mai haere mai whānau, mihi nui kia koe e hoa. Thank you for inviting me into this space. Much appreciated. It's, just thank you.
No,
thank you for your awhi, your aroha, your tika, your pono and your aroha.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
So thank you for being with us today and for introducing yourself. Well, I will do the same now. I'm Estela. I'm the Social Science and Humanities Coordinator of the Red de Científicos Argentinos en Nueva Zelanda. In English, Argentine Scientists Network of New Zealand. This is the first activity that we are doing from the network, an open activity with public present. So thank you for being today with us. So for that reason, we decided to start inviting Hinemoa to honor the people of the land. Well, to briefly introduce how the activity is gonna go. We're going to have a Kōrero with Hinemoa about identity, cultural differences, privilege, and the dimension of power. We will take about 20-30 minutes with that, and then we are open the space for questions and comments from you. You're more than welcome to be part of it too. Then we're going to close the space with Karakia and about 11:30. Well, thank you for introducing yourself at the beginning of it, and can you tell us a little more about that? And I was thinking how your Papa was also present there, and what is the meaning of that? Why is that important for you and for your people?
I suppose when introducing myself, first and foremost, I am my identity. It honours and acknowledges our tupuna, our ancestors, what we call our tupuna before us, because without our tupuna we wouldn't be present. And I suppose in context of current states, it's a reconnection or to ensure we don't lose who we are in context of the expectation of current society. To always honour our knowledges before us that what brought us to here. And without my tupuna, I wouldn't be here. Without my nan, my mother, I wouldn't be here. So it's really a recognition of our historical knowledges to bring forward and keep bringing that forward in order for a secure sense of self in our current context of Aotearoa, I suppose. Primarily.
Well, kia ora. I was thinking and I'm thinking, connecting what I just saying, is it difficult to be a Māori? There are some challenges that you face because of being Māori. For you and your people. How to answer that, because that's quite a broad question. I think as a Māori, it's actually, to be honest, to be blunt, it's easier being Māori abroad. And I mean that in terms of being Māori in New Zealand, we're quite a secondary citizen. Well, that's my experience. And I say that, I can probably Kōrero to what highlighted my experience of that was mainly around the education system. And in context of language constructs, acceptability within an education system, being good enough within an education system, being only accepted in an education system because of my identity, because they had to fill the gaps of Māori, bridging, being seen to be accessing Māori to be education to tick a box. So that's how I got in. But using my identity in that way, for me, in understanding that, to use it as a determinant to ensure it gets named and highlighted and bridging gaps continually for our future generations.
So do you think that your experience in the university was different because of being Maori?
Yes. Direct yes, in terms of the language constructs. I struggled at university. I'll be pono tika with everyone. It was a real struggle for me. Just simply because I wasn't raised. My first language is English, but my heart and my tummy is Māori. So some of the language that was used in university was language I had frickin' no idea about. Sorry, I'm just a bit honest. I had no idea what they were meaning, but the expectation on understanding dominant discourse or other ways of thinking, so I had to think white to write white, but I wasn't white. So it was kind of, in some ways, there's always a sacrifice of your wairua, of your heart or your soul, in order to kind of continually to fit, and that's exhausting. And then I even seeking or reaching for support was really difficult, because there was very minimal Māori support within that space that didn't kind of have to fit and sit and accommodate their hierarchy, so we had to negate that space. Here's an example to kind of clarify, because I know I can come off quite confusing and I'll be pono around that, but I remember going to psychotherapy training actually at the time, and I was, my friend, like they were wanting us to write to counter transparency and transparency, and I was like, it just had no meaning making for me. I had no idea what they were meaning, so, and then I didn't pass because I couldn't feel there was any depth for me, so I just wrote quite surfacely, and I didn't pass that particular paper. And I went to a friend of mine, he Māori, and I was talking to her around my struggle of understanding the language construct. And she said, it's wairua Hinemoa. See, I understand that language because wairua has depth and it has heart, and it's got a heartbeat. So once I figured that, and that's the difference of language, once I understood that, I could write to anything. But yet it's not my first language, but it's in my heart and in my gut. So it's just having to shift my own way of thinking in order to accommodate often the other way of thinking. It is quite exhausting and quite a lonely space.
Did you consider leaving? I mean, when you were a student?
Oh yeah, after 2 years of doing my degree, I actually absolutely wanted to leave, but it was my mother that encouraged me to stay. Only because, and we would have a kōrero because it was through my grandmother's sacrifice. My grandmother was slapped for speaking te reo at school, her own language, so that was only 2 generations back. Then my mother and my father had to make a decision whether my mother speaks te reo, and in that generation, my mum and dad discussed that having te reo wouldn't be a pathway forward in the new world. So we lost, and that's the impact of colonisation there. And then, can you come back to that question? Because I know this is where I just go on these navigational spaces.
No, if you consider leaving the university.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was...
And I was also wondering what made you stay, and you are answering that.
I wanted to leave originally because it was just too hard. It was too hard, it was too frustrating, and people who I asked didn't understand where I was coming from. I am Māori in a dominant construct, but consistently being told to think differently. And then, but what made me stay is an honouring of my mother. That's why I was going there. It was an honouring of my mother and my grandmother as wahine Māori, because they sacrificed for me to be educated. they were the sacrilege for me to be able to step into a space of education. My grandmother's generation weren't allowed, and because women and men were colonised differently, my grandmother wasn't able to be educated. My mother was the first generation that was of Wahine Māori descent to go into an education system, and it was only that reason that I stayed. Why did they suffer for me to walk away so easily? That was the reason. So that's that kaitiakitanga, that honouring, that protection, that guardianship of what they have sacrificed to ensure that it doesn't continue. That was the only reason I stayed, in honouring of them. Because I could hear my nan probably slapping me in my on one side, because my nan had passed by then. And so, I could hear her. You can't, that's the main reason I stayed in education, is an honouring of her and my mum. Yeah.
You just say that men and women were educated in a different way. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Women didn't go through education, particularly Māori women. They were colonised to be at home, procreate. In the impact, women had a place before the impact of colonisation, but in that generation, when they came in, they procreate. And they had this concept that they had their place in the home. Men came in, and then the idea that they needed to be the providers, they were the dominant decision makers within the household, that women's status was quite different within that household, because there's something on, and I'm not too sure, I did have a copy of it, where when the settlers came in, they looked at Māori men and they were surprised how nurturing our tāne are. So they wanted to shift that across and ensure women had that place. So the first gender that was educated was pushed through were men. Women weren't even, particularly Māori women, weren't considered in those generations. This particular book, Fitzgerald, Education and Identity, talks quite deeply into that, because I had to figure it out as well. Why is it such a gendering space with? But because we took on other people's ideas of what it was to be wahine and tāne, but weren't tāne, they were men, because they didn't acknowledge women's positioning. And so pre-colonisation, women always had a place alongside of men in that space where mainstream or settler ideas, women have a different place than men, dare I say it. I could go in deep and go, but I know that I'll unravel and it'll go in all different places. But so our place was to procreate, sit in the kitchen, do your job while our men went out and worked. That's the new settler kind of discourse that came into light, where we had different places. We had big voices on the marae. We had, we were standing by our tāne that would be doing the kōrero, whai kōrero, but it'll be the woman that would be guiding their tāne, ne? And what to say. That place was slowly over time discarded. So, so in them, I'm mindful of that. And
Kia ora. Now I'm gonna jump in a different direction. I know that you have been overseas.
Yeah.
How has been your experience? I was thinking we have talked about the privilege of holding a New Zealand passport, and the same as how it's to be Māori outside of New Zealand.
I suppose my university journey started with the impacts of my experience overseas. Kind of really made me realise my own privilege as a New Zealander with a New Zealand passport. I was overseas with my ex-partner, Renato, he is Colombiano, no? De Manizales. And we were travelling through Latin America, and often I was able to pass the borders a lot more freely than he was due to his passport. And And I remember we finally were able to fly, but he didn't get an appropriate visa, and we flew into Honduras, and he was therefore deported. I had to stay. But over that time and that experience, I remember thinking my privilege from being a Western woman. People would say to me, like people had asked me, what was your greatest experiences in travel? And I says, my freedom as a Western female. And people would say, but you're not Western. I says, yes, I am. I am from a Western society ultimately and raised in that way. So from that experience, I remember having an interaction, because you get on, and when he got deported, there was a whole lot of backlog of that. But I remember having an engagement with a person that was from England, and she made a comment that said, I don't need to speak Spanish, they can speak English. Oh my God.
Wow.
And having just had my partner that was, he was from the same land, same tūranga waiwai, the same kind of histories as where I was, yet he wasn't even able to enter into that space. Yet we have people from lot more dominant cultures that feel that they don't even have to speak the language of the land, but still can feel freer to go. And yet he gets shafted back to his own. That really kind of was my own position of power, the expectations of other, the non-expectation of others to make efforts to enter the land, which they don't actually belong, but have entitlement to be whoever they want to be. So those are kind of some of the things that really highlighted on my journey, some of the inequities that probably ignited some of the inequities for myself when I came home. Because I never felt it when I was growing up, because I was in, woo! But, so those were probably a lot of the points of, had I not gone overseas and seen indifference, I don't know if I'd have the same stance. I would probably be I might be, barefoot and pregnant, like the stereotype Māori wahine that's over in New Zealand. So for my experiences abroad, I really appreciate my own position of privilege to fly free, enter in and out of countries without having a visa, more privileged than the people of the land themselves. That was really quite hard. My ngākau was in a lot of pain for the people as well. So yeah, those experiences really highlight our privileges, eh? So much so.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's a lot to talk about that, no?
Yeah.
But I was thinking about the different identities that we hold. And I know that you have different cultural backgrounds at the same time. How do you live that? Do you consider yourself like bicultural? Or what do you think about biculturality here?
I identify first and foremost as Māori. I was raised in the discourse of what was the discourse they used to say? Half caste was when I was raised as a younger person. They'd say, "Oh, you're half caste." I accepted that because it wasn't an issue for me. But as I got older, other people had issue with it because there was this kind of evolution of identity happening, and people would say, "But that makes you half a caste of somebody else. That makes you lesser than." I'm going, I got no issue because that's how I was raised, and some of that kind of kōrero would come through.
What does half caste mean?
Well, in New Zealand at the time, I'm 52 now, so 50 years before, it meant that a mix of two identities, particularly Māori and other. So you got a mix of two cultural identities, but specific to Māori and other. And it could be Māori and European Māori and Pākehā Māori and Pacifica Māori. And so the caste was set with the Māori identity and other.
And what is your other identity?
my own identity for me is Māori. And my father's, but I always acknowledge my father's whakapapa. He whakapapas back to Ireland. He's actually Romani Gypsy way, way, way back in his identity, and that's probably my Gypsy blood. And I always honour him because he's stuck by my mother, because he experienced his own reverse racism with the other side. I'm mindful, but because of the not knowing, my koro not knowing. But I don't, for me, and this is my pono, my truth, I don't think living biculturally for me is a term that I use. I jump in and out of cultures. Okay. I jump into my Māori culture when I'm feeling uncomfortable or safe in another culture, or I'll adapt to whatever environment I'm in. Because to live biculturally is, for me, is an impossibility. Because if I was true, I'd be speaking te reo in my mahi and have the expectation or speaking English in te ao Māori and people actually understanding the whole. But that's not our reality. So that adaptation into different worlds consistently. But I had to work that out. I thought I had to be bicultural. But no, I'm Pākehā in moments and I'm Māori in moments. But underneath it, I am... My toto is Māori, my bloodline is with my Māori identity becoming stronger because of my experiences of feeling often split within my person and within my agent. But I'm Māori over-representation in New Zealand. We're all split in some ways, but working that out, people have managed that better than others, I suppose. So, yeah.
Do you need to do that at work? I mean, jumping from one identity to another.
my role is called a Kōrero role, and I work in, I don't want to name it just for privacy and confidentiality in case they sue me. No, sorry, they won't because but which means I work as a Kaupapa Maori practitioner. I don't have reo, which often Māori roles require that. But my role is working primarily with tāne and rangatahi who are incarcerated in quite a high maxi space, what they call maxi, and working primarily with who they are, who they identify to be, not who they are expected to be as Māori in a Kōrero. Like identity is a complex thing, and who I work with may not want a Kōrero because of the shame, the expectation of being a Māori in a certain way. So sometimes they withdraw from accepting support because Māori can come in with this whole like, this is who you are, but it's navigating waiwai tapu, treading carefully. I've got to think waiwai tapu we call it, treading carefully into spaces to kind of draw on our rangatahi and tāne's comfortableness to navigate that path back to their whakapapa and what that whakapapa may be for them, and engaging in identities that enhance their mana rather than identities that diminish what their action has done, has landed them there. However, it isn't their whole identity. They've got other identities that they can reach out for to ensure their wairua, their moody, is enhanced to ensure that they don't continue to do what has landed them where they are. Because they are, I just believe in our people are more than what our social construct is to be. Yeah.
Well,
also.
Thank you, Hinemoa. Yeah. If that's okay with you, we can open now the space for comments or questions from the public. If there's something that you would like to join us, or we can keep talking here.
I'll start with a question. Have you met other mixed race people in other countries and how they dealt with that dual identity?
That's a good question. I can't say I can identify that I have met people. Actually,
not mixed, but people living in countries that originate from other countries, which is a little bit different, but how they've accommodated themselves to fit the social norms. I've got, for example, one of my very good friends that I met in London. I used to call her black because she was comfortable with that. And so someone said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't call her that." And so I said to my mate, I said, "Oh, what do you want me to call you?" And she goes, "I'm black. I'm all good with it." You know, her whakapapa goes back to Grenada, and so I asked her, would she prefer to be called Grenada in her whakapapa? She goes, "No, I'm comfortable with where I am and what I'm at." But she's had to, like most people that have travelled to another country, her living is not Grenadan. She lives very white, dare I say it, because she had, you know, but the person that she is doesn't mean to say she's white, but she has to accommodate as well. Her daughter is of two worlds, and I think from what her kōrero with me has been, that her daughter has really struggled, and she in how she sees herself, but that's probably all that I can think of when I think of mixed. I cannot actually say I haven't, and I probably didn't have those conversations as deeply at the time I was travelling, because my travelling experience was around curiosity and interest in culture, how to be with other people within those cultures. And I was just a girl from New Zealand. That's how, you know, people I'm sure abroad didn't really understand. Places I travel wouldn't know there was any indifferent, you know, to being, you know, you're Māori, I'm just New Zealander over there. Because apparently overseas we're part of Australia. It was a lot of the conversations when you go overseas, "Oh, you're part of Australia," and I'm like, "What?" I was in New York, and there was a world map, and there was no New Zealand on it. Yeah. And so a lot of people didn't even know who we are, let alone as an indigenous culture here. We were just a generalised kind of colonised norm of the wider world. So yeah, and that was another thing that really highlighted for me, is not seeing New Zealand on world maps. Who are we then as a people, as a nation, if we're not even included in the wider world? Yeah, that kind of was like, geez, far out.
It's huge.
But aroha mai, I can't really answer that, because I probably didn't delve enough at that time to be curious enough. It's more so when I've landed back home. Actually, I think coming back home has been my hardest journey. Coming back, it took me probably 3 years to actually settle back here. And then, still very unsettled because of it's such a being, I think for myself as Māori, and it feels like it's not a battle about winning a war, but it feels like we're always having to try and create a space of equity, but then there will never be equity when there's always going to be discourse that tells us how we need to accommodate and fit, and it can be, you know, whether at strategic national level or even from the ground up. And I think being a wahine Māori has another tinge to it as well, especially if you go into spaces. I work in a predominantly white gendered system, with a lot of ideas of not needing to know my place. But I'm lucky I've got a ko-mātua that I work alongside of that enhances me to know my place as wahine Māori as a strength, not a weakness. So working within that, and that's that working in both. I jumped into my mātua and I'll be like, rah, and then I have to go back up to other authorities in the space
to have that conversation, to often be in a position, well, actually, if we're talking around bridging identities, bringing in the bicultural aspects, being honouring of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, these are some of the things that you're going to have to come through a different lens, because the systemic racism processes are just rife, as Māori, it's an ongoing space to try and adapt, try to accommodate, try to fit. But I'm comfortable enough now. I just worry about our future generations, and this is always why we go back to whakapapa, ne? How can we be kaitiaki to our future generations when we've got future generations that don't actually know what their whakapapas of identities are? You know, how do we keep and protect them to be comfortable in the new world when this generation or the past generation doesn't even know how to do that themselves, to protect who are Māori going to be in 10, 20 years worries me. You know, it's like, so that's why we've got this regeneration of trying to bring in educated Māori to that's even bad in itself, isn't it? You know, who's an educated Māori to be good enough to fit in the ideas, you know, be intelligent enough to think white, because that's what you have to consistently do. Yeah, and that's why whakapapa is so important in trying to engage whakapapa with our people to secure themselves in the future before, you know, we get genocided by nature out, to be comfortable with who we are. But sometimes our deliveries can be kind of disseminating in itself, so depending on how we deliver our kōrero, will it be heard? I don't know. I told you I go off on these random kōrero, but
Sandra?
I have a question. How do you see because we know that New Zealand also itself is a country where a lot of nationalities, ethnicities also live together. I don't know if live together, but at least live here in a multicultural point of view. How do you see that diversity in New Zealand impact in some ways the construction of the Maori knowledge, or that resistance of keep going and preserving the Maori knowledge?
I've got a really blunt and short, and it's not to diminish the other. I had a kōrero with a friend around the same similar thing, because I said, why is it that, for me, first and foremost, multiculturalism, and when we call multiculturalism, actually diminishes biculturalism positioning within the context of Aotearoa, because it distracts us from actually what is the honouring of that baseline first. And it's not diminishing multiculturalism is important, it's not what I'm saying, but often multiculturalism has come off the back of biculturalism. But how can we work well with multiculturalism if we haven't even done biculturalism appropriately in its tikanga, in its pono, in its aroha? And I'm on it. It's not around diminishing the other. But, and this is disclosure of my mother actually, she says, until New Zealand government understand that we aren't one nation, one people, we are one nation, two people. Biculturalism will always be diminished and others will always take hold over. And that's no diminishment of anybody. But I think that's where the struggle is often, because we're talking, we got cases, you know, we've got in a political forum at the moment with Luxon and then fighting for these ideas and diminishing in some of those ideas. And I think because the focus is often on multiculturalism, they forget, well, how did they get here? I know a lot of policies are based on biculturalism and utilise bicultural scripture in order to get their needs met. They've got their needs met, but they've left biculturalism behind in order for their needs to be met within any kind of community setting. And it's and I say again, I'm not being mean. I'm just being.
No, it's good to know.
Yeah, and I think, and it goes back again to often having to accommodate, because even in work experiences, you know, we go in, we take the mana of Māori. You know, Māori are often in workplaces to do the kind of, you know, the tick the box, we're that Māori that bring people in, do the pōwhiri, do all the, oh yeah, you can go now, we've got your need, we've got our needs met, we've ticked the box of our bicultural stance and obligations to te o waitangi. Even those actions are diminishing the mana of Māori, because we are more than just tokenistic presentations or representations to say that they've ticked the box. So that's that deconstruction stuff. Yeah. I know even, it's and I think it's wonderful that multiculturalism can integrate, because you've got more of an idea of what it is to be away from the familiarities more so. And even my father, because by narrative discourse, I'd be what would I be, a native migrant if I were to identify myself from the structures of narrative therapy. Because my mother's native, Māori, my father's born in Australia and his whakapapa's Irish. So I include myself in that whakaaro. But my dad's also identified as a Pākehā from overseas, that New Zealanders have a really screwed way of thinking of how Māori are positioned here, and he's a foreigner. So often, and that's why I honour the lenses from others, because they see the differences more so than those from New Zealand. And that was interesting, because we have these open conversations, and I suppose because he has Māori children.
Yeah.
You know, he goes up to the bowling club, really white man's club. I rock in and pick him up. I'm always weary, but and he's always having to navigate the space to make me feel comfortable in a predominant. So he's probably sitting in a different worldview as well himself. But yeah, I've got a very strong stance on the diminishment of mana of Māori. Okay, I'm just. This isn't disclosing, because I'm really conscious of, but yeah, I know a kōrero that happened within a work environment that where we had a lot of tāne that welcomed a new person into a space who held a whole role, and they came out of themselves, and so they did the beautiful pōwhiri, went through the whole processes. Then they were sent back to the cells. So we take the mana of our kānene, or whomever's doing the pōwhiri, but we punish them. As soon as we got what our needs are met, we punish them and we put them back where they were before. But in Te Ao Māori, they should be part of the puraaki, the part of the process of eating. They should be in the kitchen, they should be eating with us. That's tikanga. But we take their mana and we punish them for it. And so it's those kind of things that are inconsistent in the constructions of biculturalism, whatever it's not. If they really understood that you don't take someone's mana and then punish them for it and then take it back. It's also, I've had a few challenges in my mahi. That's probably why I keep jumping from job to job. But I remember Kōrero in one of my other jobs. I challenged. There was a social work leader, or Māori lead in an environment who was non-Māori, and this is kind of the deconstruction of, how is that mana enhancing for Māori, having a non-Māori telling how Māori should be. And so I challenged my hierarchies at the time, and I was told to keep shum, and I wouldn't. And I says, and then my line manager said, Hinemoa, it's about, well, we're here to teach others, and that's our job to teach others. And I said, so, and when they've taken what they need from us, they go and say they've integrated and worked in Te Ao Māori places. So they take again our knowledge is, and that's okay, but because they're not aware of that. But it's constant. It's a constant taking. Yet we can, it's that at what point where is that reciprocity of care and awhi to nurture and mana enhance and mana protect Māori, to be so they can bring back their whakapapa knowledge, so they can be kaitiaki and protect their children and guard their in the future. How are Māori going to present in the future if they don't have that support? And I remember asking this wahine, my line manager at the time, I asked her a lot of questions. I said, so has this wahine got mokopuna Māori? Has she married into Māori? And I was being a bit of a dick. And I said, has she had the lived experience as Māori in the context of Aotearoa? Which I knew she hasn't, because she's not Māori. But she may have experienced it through someone she knows. All no to those questions. Then I asked, so was anybody else, any Māori, considered for the role, that applied for the role? Yes, Hinemoa, there were 2 Māori, but they didn't have the clinical experience. And I says, and then I says, so are you saying that the person that's chosen has Māori experience? They says, oh no, they were setting up, they were ensuring that she had those connections to the community. And then I said, so you were prepared to give a non-Māori that position,
offer those supports for her, but not offer the clinical
supports that she the other 2 applicants that were Māori. And they just looked at it, and it's that consistency of diminishing mana Māori. And it's not, I'm not diminishing the fact that people are curious and want to engage in it. But it's more around how a Māori, where do Māori fit? Where do Māori sit? What is our roles, rights and responsibilities? We've got tūranga whakakapi, roles, rights and responsibilities, but where do we really fit in the context when we've got dominant discourse that says, well, other cultures may be better for the role than your own, to tell you fellas how to do. And that's only of recent years, so it's not something that's happened historically, it's something that's happened currently. But it's still there, and so that's the continual, I don't want to call it a battle, but the continual conversations we have to have just to prove ourselves, just to be saying, hey, see us? Can you see us? Are we good enough? Because we've got so many of us that don't think we're good enough. And then, so it's that,
Well, thank you, Hinemoa. We have 5 more minutes, so is there another question or comment?
Thank you.
It's a couple of minutes, so both can go.
I guess it's maybe more of a statement, and you could just speak to it. I feel like it's related to the Kōrero that you've been having. But I guess just that my journey of being like a white Pākehā New Zealander that feels like disconnected from my own like whakapapa and my indigeneity, like wherever that was in my ancestry. And as I've like been on my journey and connected to what I guess like my wider world, my indigeneity, or whatever that is looking like to me as I reclaim it slowly. Like I feel like my capacity to be an ally or to hear like your experience or the experience of Māori and Aotearoa has really increased and like not triggered my own stuff. And I guess I was just curious, like if you have experienced like a sense of like from non-Māori, like being able to genuinely allow Māoridom or to have your mana and kind of like what if you have like what you've noticed around like what has helped. Does that kind of make
It's what if we also listen to Abby and then you respond to both of them and then we close?
Just I better remember the questions then.
Just for a matter of time.
Kia ora,
well. I really just want to affirm everything that you said, and just the kōrero is just so beautiful because you're just so authentic. Yeah, and really, you really went that out. My question is, you said that the world didn't really know that you existed because of some world maps. Just looking at Te Ao Māori and indigenous knowledge systems, what would you like the world to know about Māori? Well, to bridge that gap.
I think understanding that Māori under all our ngākau and aroha, that's what we have. That we, it's a big question. We exist beyond what is presented to be. We exist beyond the over-representations of everything that's socially constructed about us. A lot of my mahi at the moment is bringing a lot of the voices that are unseen into to be seen, bringing the invisible kōrero alive to bridge beyond. Because I work in quite a deep, heavy space. And I suppose when you've just kind of ignited for me, wahine a tahua, my purpose of being there is to reconstruct the identities of who they think they are as violent men, as useless, as all these ideas, but to understand they are Māori with identities of mana, that they have other alternative whakapapa that says they have the right to their knowledges within themselves as tāne rangatahi wahine of honour. We are people of honour. I think it's been lost in the ideas of what is expected of us. And that links a lot to Wairua, Maori, or Te Maori, or we are people of honour and aroha. I only knew aroha from my mother. It wasn't my father's whakapapa that showed me that. It was my mother's whakapapa, and my mother's one of 14 children. And she was whāngai, what they call, gifted to a great aunt and great uncle. And through all of them, in my auntie's one thing, and there's a consistency we've all had, is that aroha. And it wasn't through the other culture, it was through my Māori side that has the strength of aroha. My hope for whom I work with is for them to know that being Māori is okay. There's a beauty in being Māori. It's something to be proud of, not to be ashamed of. Because I think through the generations, I meet people in their whakamā, I meet people in their wairua, and a lot with the whakamā means many, many things. It can mean being embarrassed because they are Māori, therefore they don't want to meet me because I'm Māori, because they should be a certain type of Māori. So one thing I know that we are very proud people, and people of honour, and have a lot to offer in aroha. As we know in counselling, or the ethic, as one of the ethics, me and moimoia, it's ethics, aroha is an ethical responsibility to our people that we serve. I think that's our people are honourable, proud people, lots of aroha for everybody, that we are a collective being, we never do things in the eye, and when we do things, we do to ensure that we honour others and content with that. So, but how to work that in a mainstream way of thinking is really hard. We have to sacrifice language to fit the culture, to make policies that will fit the policies of the mainstream to make sure we're seen. So I'm not too sure how that works in the context of that.
We are arriving to the end of the meeting. There's something else that you want to add before we close?
I just wanted to acknowledge this more as well. Can you just repeat your question, Maria?
I guess I just wanted to hear your experience of what you felt like genuinely helped your or you're Māori and working in predominantly white spaces from people that are white or Pākehā or non-Māori.
I think with people that accept that they don't know, and people that don't pretend to know or try to know, I think that their authenticity that's where I suppose the people that I've built trust with that aren't Māori don't pretend that they know how to be Māori or what is best for Māori when they are not Māori, and I think that's probably the biggest one. Because Māori e tūnei, we tūna whakahoa crop, someone's kind of, but I think that one, and create a space that enables natural conversation to be able to talk to where they're at. But yeah, that's probably been my biggest learning, is people that are genuine around, hey, I don't know what it is to be Māori, because that opens a pathway of trust in itself. And also don't tell me how to be Māori is another one. Despite the systems telling me. That's a definite for me. Because I have had even Māori and non-Māori tell me how to be Māori. And it's like, okay. Still. Why can't they? And so, yeah. So I think that's probably...
Well, thank you. Sorry for we will have to close for today, but thank you so much for sharing your experience, your reflection, your wisdom with us. It's so much appreciated for all of us.
I'll just close us up with a little bit of a closing waiata karakia. It's Mā waira I tauri mā te marae I wahone mā te tika mā te pono me te aro ai. That just means who's going to take care of the injustices that sit outside our whare, our marae, our home, our places and spaces. It's through tika pono and aroha. It's through tika as the doing the right thing for the right reasons. Pono, being truthful and honest, and with aroha that can mean many things: compassion, empathy, honesty, genuinity, authenticity. So those are the pathways that we go generally within Te Ao Māori. And mihi nui ki a koe e hoa. Kia ora koutou katoa, mihi nui koutou. I just want to acknowledge my wāhine a tāhua here for inviting me and trusting me in the space, and for you all for taking the time to attend today. Mihi nui ki a koe, me kōrero koutou katoa. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, kia ora.
Kia ora.